My name is Elena Carter, I'm 14 years old, and I used to think my friends were the only people who truly understood me. That changed the morning I opened my locker and found it stuffed with folded notes, each one signed with my name, but filled with words I never wrote. By lunch, everyone was whispering and pointing, and my so-called best friend was holding court at the cafeteria table, laughing the loudest. "Come on, Elena," she smirked loud enough for everyone to hear, "you actually expect us to believe you didn't write these?" Something burned in my chest then, not tears, but a sharp, quiet anger I didn't know I had, and that was the moment I stopped caring about proving myself innocent, and started planning something else. The bell rang sharp, like metal splitting air. My fingers still smelled faintly of cafeteria pizza grease when I tugged open my locker. At first, I thought someone had jammed a stack of old homework inside. Then the papers rained out, fluttering, skittering across the floor like trapped birds. Students stopped. Some bent to pick them up, smirking. My chest tightened. I dropped to my knees, grabbing the nearest one. My handwriting stared back at me, neat and slanted, but the words felt jagged. "Chelsea thinks her eyeliner makes her look like a raccoon," she cried when her dad left, pathetic. "Mr. Dawson stares at girls in class," each line slashed across the page like a blade. My name signed at the bottom. Elena Carter. Over and over, laughter rippled through the hallway, small at first, then louder. Heat crept up my neck. I wanted to scream that it wasn't me, that someone had copied my handwriting. But the words stuck in my throat, sticky as glue. Chelsea herself stood at the edge of the crowd, one of the notes pinched between her nails. Her lip curled, a cruel half-smile. "Guess Elena's been busy." The hallway pulsed with whispers. Eyes darted, peeled me open. My knees dug into the dirty tiles, scattered notes fanning out around me like evidence in a trial. I tried to gather them faster, shoving them into my backpack, fingers shaking. "They're fake," I muttered, but it sounded small, like a fly buzzing against glass. "Sure," someone snickered. I wanted my mom there, even though I knew she'd just be rubbing the ache out of her back after another night shift. She'd say, "Ignore them, baby. People get bored." But this felt bigger, heavier, like it had roots that were already wrapping around my ankles. By lunch, my stomach felt like a knotted rope. I carried my tray like it might steady me, but the cafeteria buzzed louder than usual, every laugh and scrape of a chair scraping against my skin. I told myself it would be okay, that Kayla would be at our table, rolling her eyes and making dumb jokes until I could breathe again. She was there. But so was the storm. Kayla stood on top of the low cafeteria stage, the one usually reserved for talent shows and pep talks. A folded note dangled between her fingers. My handwriting stared back at me from its creases. "Listen up, everyone," she called, her voice slicing through the chatter. Her brown ponytail swung with practiced confidence. She unfolded the note, clearing her throat with a mock-serious face. "Mr. Dawson's wife left him because even she couldn't stand him. Guess she got tired of all those boring science jokes." The cafeteria erupted. Laughter rolled in waves, bouncing off the walls. Forks clattered. Even kids who never spoke to me leaned forward, eyes wide, greedy for more. I froze mid-step, tray trembling in my hands. Kayla's smirk hooked into me like barbed wire. That was my best friend, the girl who shared fries with me, who whispered secrets during sleepovers, who once promised she'd never leave me alone in the dark. Now she was the one holding the torch. "Kayla," I croaked, trying to cut through the roar. My voice cracked, thin as paper. "Stop. It's not," but the words shriveled. 100 faces turned toward me. The silence between their laughter was worse, like being caught under a spotlight you didn't choose. Kayla raised the note higher, basking in the glow of their attention. She didn't even look at me. For them, she was the queen of comedy. For me, she was a stranger. I wanted to disappear into the floor, vanish like steam off the pizza slices cooling on my tray. Instead, I shuffled backward, heart pounding, nails digging into my palms until little crescents marked my skin. And then Kayla said the one sentence that broke me in half. One paper clung to my shoe. I peeled it off. The words blurred for a second, then sharpened, "No one really likes her, they just pretend." My throat burned. I shoved it deep into my bag, but the sentence wouldn't leave. A teacher's voice cut through the noise, "Back to class, everyone." The crowd scattered, but the silence that followed was worse. Heavy? Knowing. I stayed crouched, hugging my backpack tight. My heartbeat thudded in my ears. It didn't matter that I hadn't written a single word. The notes had already done their job. Underscore, and that's when I realized the truth didn't matter, only the story they chose to believe. The bell hadn't even finished ringing when Mrs. Harris's voice sliced through the hallway. "Elena." With me, her tone wasn't sharp, worse, it was heavy, the kind of voice teachers use when they've already made up their minds. My feet dragged like I was wading through wet cement. Inside her classroom, the blinds filtered in strips of gray light. She didn't sit. She just stood by her desk, holding a crumpled fistful of notes like a pile of evidence. My handwriting glared back at me, twisted into daggers. "These were found in lockers and hallways," she said, her lips pressed tight. "Disruptive. Cruel. And you, Elena, know better." The words hit harder than if she'd yelled. I felt my throat close, my chest cave. "I didn't," my voice cracked, desperate. "I swear, I didn't write any of them." "Someone's framing me." Mrs. Harris's frown deepened, the lines around her mouth folding in disappointment. Not anger. Disappointment. Somehow, that stung worse. "Elena, denying it doesn't change what's in front of me," she said quietly. "You're too smart to play games like this." Her certainty was a wall I couldn't climb. My protests bounced off and fell back on me like stones. I wanted to scream, to shake her and make her see me, but the harder I tried, the smaller I felt. She filled out the slip slowly, the scratch of her pen loud in the silence. Each letter felt like a nail being hammered into my chest. When she slid across the desk, I couldn't move at first. Detention. It looked like one word, but it felt like a verdict. Not a mistake, not a misunderstanding, proof. Proof to the world that I was guilty. I took the slip with numb fingers, my eyes burning, my mouth too dry to speak. Mrs. Harris looked at me like I'd broken something fragile inside her, like I wasn't the Elena who used to raise her hand first in class, but someone else entirely. And in that moment, standing in the gray light with my name inked on punishment, I realized then, it wasn't just my friends against me. It was the whole system. The apartment door clicked shut long after sunset. I'd been sitting at the kitchen table for an hour, the glow from the fridge light spilling across my untouched dinner. When Mom stepped in, she smelled like bleach and stale coffee, her uniform wrinkled from another double shift. "Hey," she murmured, dropping her keys into the chipped bowl by the door. Her shoulders sagged under invisible weight. "Everything okay at school?" I opened my mouth, ready to spill it all, the notes, the laughter, the detention slip burning a hole in my backpack. But the words tangled in my throat, sticky and bitter. Instead, I held up the slip like proof. "They're saying I wrote things I didn't." My voice cracked on the last word. "I didn't, Mom." She rubbed at her temples, eyes closing for a heartbeat too long. "Stay out of trouble, Elena. Please. I can't. I just can't deal with another call from school." Her tone wasn't cruel, but it landed like a slammed door. I stared at her, waiting for her to meet my eyes. She didn't. She just moved past me, untying her shoes, her silence a wall I couldn't climb. Home used to feel like a blanket, the smell of cinnamon toast, the buzz of our old TV, the soft hum of her singing along to the radio. Tonight it felt like another hallway where my voice didn't matter. I pushed my plate away and slipped into my room, shutting the door softly. The ceiling above me was cracked, a pale map of lines I used to trace when I couldn't sleep. I lay there tracing them again, but this time the lines felt like roads leading nowhere. My chest rose and fell fast, my fists tight under the blanket. Silence filled the room, heavy and humming, like it was daring me to speak. That night, I decided silence would never save me again. The next morning, I walked into class with my head down, bracing for the usual whispers. My desk felt like an island, every pencil tap and chair scrape crashing against me. I had started counting the seconds until the bell, the way people count heartbeats during a panic attack. That's when Liam sat beside me. He never sat there, he was the kind of kid who disappeared into corners, sketching shadows in his notebook. Today, he moved with purpose, like he had been waiting. He didn't look at me, didn't clear his throat. His voice was so low it felt like it came from the floorboards. "I saw who put the notes in your locker." The words pierced through the static in my head. My chest tightened, and for the first time in days, I wasn't drowning, I was gasping, clawing for the surface. "Who?" I whispered, my voice breaking. Liam finally turned his head, his hair falling into his eyes. "Kayla?" Her name landed like a stone dropped in water, rippling outward. My best friend. My almost sister. The one who used to braid my hair before assemblies. I wanted to deny it, laugh it off as impossible, but the way his eyes held mine left no room for escape. My pulse raced so hard I thought everyone could hear it. Why? Why would she? He cut me off. "If you go after her, she'll ruin you worse. She knows where to cut deepest." The warning should have terrified me. Instead, it felt like gasoline. My fear twisted into something darker, heavier. I pictured Kayla's smirk in the cafeteria, the notes crumpling in my fists, the way silence had buried me. For the first time, I imagined more than survival. I imagined turning the storm back on her. Liam looked down again, as if speaking those words had drained him. But the damage was done. The truth wasn't a shield, it was a weapon. That was the first time I thought about revenge, not just survival. Silence became my disguise. At first, people thought I was folding in on myself, breaking down under the weight of whispers. But silence wasn't collapse, it was construction. Every unsaid word became a brick. Every swallowed retort, mortar. I wasn't crumbling, I was building. Kayla thought she'd won because the hallways echoed with her laughter instead of mine. What she didn't realize was that I had stopped fighting on her battlefield. I wasn't trying to clear my name anymore. I was studying hers. I watched how she thrived when eyes were on her, how she leaned into drama like it was oxygen. She couldn't survive without an audience. She needed the spotlight the way I needed a place to hide. That was her weakness, and I began sketching it out in my head like blueprints no one else could see. In the cafeteria, I laughed at her jokes, even the ones that cut me open. Every forced smile was another wall rising in my secret design. In the classroom, I leaned over to copy her answers, pretending to still trust her. I became her shadow, quiet and agreeable, while inside I was drawing lines and arrows across the walls of my mind. At night, my notebooks filled with more than homework. Scribbled maps of the school. Notes about her routine, when she checked her locker, when she liked to brag, which teacher she mocked under her breath. Patterns emerged, and each discovery was another nail hammered into the scaffolding of my plan. One sentence circled over and over in the margins, etched so hard my pen nearly tore the paper: "She'll trip on her own lie." I stopped crying into my pillow. I stopped begging the ceiling for mercy. The silence wasn't empty anymore, it buzzed with potential, like a stage before the curtain rises. I didn't need to scream for people to hear me. I just needed to wait, patient and steady, until the moment came when Kayla's own hunger for attention would undo her. I just had to build the stage and wait for her to perform. The plan hinged on one note. Not just any note, but a perfectly forged secret that looked like it had slipped from Kayla's own hand. I practiced her handwriting until my wrist ached, copying the dramatic loops of her K's, the sharp flick of her Y's. Every curve had to sing in her voice, every letter needed to be hers, not mine. The message itself wasn't cruel, just dangerous enough to taste like gossip, sharp enough to draw blood. A rumor wrapped in bait. I slipped it into her locker between classes, timing it so no one would see, heart hammering as though the walls themselves might catch me. By lunch, I sat in my usual corner, tray untouched, waiting. I didn't have to wait long. Kayla strutted into the cafeteria, note in hand, her eyes already gleaming with the thrill of an audience. She thought she had uncovered something secret, thought she was the hunter, not the prey. "Guess what I found," she sang, waving the paper like a flag. Heads turned. Conversations faltered. Even teachers passing by glanced in, curious. Kayla lived for that, every gaze pulled tight around her like silk thread. She fed on it. She cleared her throat and read the words aloud, savoring each syllable. The crowd leaned closer, breaths held, waiting for the sting. But as the sentence unraveled, her tone faltered. The words didn't sound like a secret whispered about someone else. They sounded like a confession. Laughter rippled through the cafeteria, sharp, cutting. Kayla blinked, glanced down again, as if she'd misread. She tried to smirk, to spin it, but the snickers only grew. I stayed silent, head bowed, but inside every nerve in me was electric. She couldn't realize, that the handwriting wasn't mine this time. It was hers. I watched her face change, pride to confusion, confusion to panic. The note she had meant to use as a weapon was already bleeding her dry in front of everyone she wanted to impress. And I didn't have to say a single word. For the first time, she was holding the knife with her own name carved into the handle. The cafeteria erupted in a chaos that felt different this time. The laughter wasn't bubbling in chorus with Kayla's voice, it was splintering against her. The note she had waved so proudly was now a weapon that cut back, and the cuts showed on her face. Her smirk faltered as whispers passed like wildfire across the tables. The throne she had built out of everyone's attention cracked beneath her feet. Teachers swarmed faster than they ever had with me. Mrs. Harris's voice, usually slow and deliberate, was sharp and clipped. Another teacher tugged the paper from Kayla's hand as though it might poison the air. "We'll talk about this in my office," one of them hissed, their tone steeped in disappointment. Kayla opened her mouth to protest, but the cafeteria had already chosen its spectacle. Eyes that once lit up at her jokes now narrowed with suspicion. I sat still at my table, hands pressed flat against the surface, pretending not to care. Pretending was easier than breathing. This was the moment I had imagined through sleepless nights, the scales tipping, the world realizing I wasn't the villain. But victory tasted strange. My chest didn't lighten, it burned heavier, like swallowing a coal and pretending it was candy. I caught Liam's eyes from across the room. He didn't smile or nod, he simply watched. It was enough to remind me that this wasn't luck, it was architecture. Every piece had been placed, every silence earned. And yet, seeing Kayla stumble, I didn't feel the triumph I had rehearsed. I felt something more dangerous, responsibility. Because justice doesn't echo the way you expect. It doesn't come with applause or balloons. It comes with silence broken in the wrong places, laughter twisted, power shifting so fast you can't hold it without burning. And in that moment, watching Kayla's crown split in two, I realized revenge isn't a finish line. It's a fire, and whoever holds it gets scorched. Still, I didn't let go. I couldn't. Kayla cornered me in the hallway, her eyes wet and frantic. Her voice cracked in ways I had never heard before. She wasn't the queen of the cafeteria now, she was just a girl stripped of her crown, shaking under the weight of whispers. "Please," she begged, her fingers gripping the strap of her backpack like it was the only thing holding her up. "Tell them it wasn't me. Tell them you made it up." The hallway smelled of floor polish and sweat, the kind of ordinary detail that makes extraordinary moments feel more unbearable. For a second, I almost gave in. For a second, I saw the girl I used to call my best friend, the one who shared secrets under blankets and laughed at jokes no one else understood. But then the image shifted, replaced by the echo of her standing in the cafeteria, my humiliation ringing in her voice. The truth wasn't simple anymore. The truth wasn't even clean. If I spoke it, I'd be unraveling everything I had clawed back piece by piece. I would lose the fragile safety of people finally believing me. I would lose the justice that had tilted, however briefly, in my favor. But if I kept silent, if I let her fall, then what did that make me? Her tears frightened me because they looked too much like my own had once. The reflection was too sharp, too close. I realized revenge had no map for this part, no warning for when your enemy stops looking like a monster and starts looking like a mirror. "I can't," I whispered, and the words felt heavier than any lie I had ever told. Kayla's face crumbled, piece by piece, until she wasn't Kayla anymore. She was just another ghost of trust I had buried. Walking away should have felt like winning. It didn't. Every step was ash in my mouth, and still I couldn't turn back. I was trapped between mercy and survival, and whichever one I chose would carve me into something new. Something I wasn't sure I wanted to become. That night, I dreamed of burning paper, and my name written on every flame. The next week, the hallways carried a different kind of silence. Not the heavy silence of suspicion, not the biting hush that used to follow me like smoke. This silence was hollow, stretched thin, almost careful. People no longer laughed at me, and they no longer looked at her either. The balance had shifted, but balance didn't feel like peace, it felt like emptiness. I walked past lockers without flinching at the sound of metal slamming. No whispers trailed behind me, no accusations dressed as jokes. Yet the absence of cruelty didn't stitch me back into the person I had been before. That girl, naive, unarmored, soft, no longer existed. She had been cut away, one note at a time. When I opened my locker again, the space felt foreign, like a wound that had scarred but never healed. I reached into my bag and pulled out a blank sheet of paper. No lies, no venom, no forged signatures. Just emptiness. I slid it onto the shelf, a silent marker of everything that had been stolen, twisted, and finally reclaimed. It wasn't forgiveness, and it wasn't surrender. It was acknowledgement. A blank page meant I could write again, even if the words I chose would never be as innocent as the ones I used to scribble in margins or journals. Blank didn't mean harmless, it meant potential. Kayla walked by once, her shoulders rounded, eyes on the ground. For the first time, I didn't feel the urge to gloat. I didn't feel the thrill of winning. I only felt the weight of everything we had both lost: trust, friendship, the version of ourselves that could still believe the world was kind. Silence used to terrify me. It used to mean I was unseen, unheard, erased. Now it felt like something else, a tool, a stage, a choice. I had learned to shape it, to let it speak louder than my words ever could. I wasn't innocent anymore. But I wasn't powerless either. And power, once tasted, doesn't disappear. It lingers in your bloodstream, reshaping you, teaching you that even blank pages carry the memory of what was written before. This story isn't about the notes I didn't write. It's about the person I decided to become after them.